Hello Mzansi, welcome to another episode of Farmers Inside Track. I'm your host, Duncan Masiwa. Of course, with South Africa's agricultural landscape changing, there's a host of legal complexities, I would say, that new era farmers are faced with, from land ownership to navigating contracts. And here to help us make sense of all of this is Pearl Gibbs, who is a legal expert, but also there is a list of other titles that are attached to your name. So before I mess it up, I'll allow you to do it.
So I am the founder and director of Gibbs Attorneys. I am an admitted attorney of the Republic of South Africa. I'm a notary public and I'm a conveyancer. So every time that I do something or specialize in something, the title gets longer.
I love it. You know, we're discussing all things legal matters, and I think it's a very important conversation, especially in the context of agriculture. A lot of new farmers are entering the space and they don't always know how to navigate or even understand the legal challenges, of course, that come with being in the agricultural sector. But before we get there, out of everything that you could have done with your life, why legal lawyer?
I know. Basically, I wanted to do medicine, right? But I have a phobia for needles. And I was like, it would not make sense for me to jump before my patient jumps. And I was like, with law, you actually get paid to talk and think. And what a better job than just to talk and think. Be a problem solver.
I love that. In South Africa, what are some of the common legal challenges that new era farmers are faced with? And I suppose for any farmer, not specifically new farmers.
Because of the nature of farming is based on a gentleman's agreement. We shake on it and that's that. And
that's where the danger comes in, right?
And they normally say in Afrikaans, your woord is wet. So they believe that you're going to stick to your word, but that's the major pitfall. That is when everything starts to cascade down and you can fall into the pit. It is what it is. So the major challenges that we have is ownership. Most of our farmers do not own the farms that they work on. Second of all is contractual relations. They still want to talk about it, shake of it, drink beer, and that's that. There are no lease agreements. There are no employment contracts. There are no agreements for the equipments that they use. So everything is on a general basis. They follow the initiative, like, let's talk about it, let's shake on it, and that's how we do it. So that's where the problem starts, that we don't necessarily build from a legal background. We don't see to it that we have the legal framework and whatever we're doing is within the legal framework. That's where it starts.
It brings me to my next question, because I suppose negotiating is a big part of it, right?
Yes.
It can be a scary thing for many people. You know, if you don't have the confidence to negotiate, you can easily be done over. Why is it important that farmers ensure that they're not being taken advantage of when entering into legal agreements? And how do I even go about avoiding that?
Number one, you need to know your rights. If you're negotiating from a point of your entitlements and your rights in terms of law, then you have the upper hand. And you need to know what is it basically that you want. You need to go into an agreement knowing what you want out of the deal. Let's say, for an example, a farmer wants to enter into a contract with an abattoir. You need to know the value of the cattle that you're going to sell. You need to know the type of meats that you have. And you need to be able to negotiate it, meaning that you need to be able to have a standpoint to say, in terms of law or in terms of the regulations, this is what I may and may not do. Now, if you know your rights, regardless of whether you're a small enterprise or a big entity, you are most likely to be heard. If you are doing things within the legal framework, then you are more likely to win at it.
With agriculture, of course, you are dependent on Mother Nature. And when entering into contract agreements, you are exposed to market price fluctuations, weather changes. How can I, as a farmer, legally mitigate these risks that I'm exposed to?
Your first point of entry will be identifying your risk. You mentioned changing weather. When the weather changes, you know that you have the risk of floods, you have the risk of maybe fires and so forth. What would you need then? Insurance. Meaning that you need to enter into an insurance agreement with a reputable insurance company in order to safeguard that asset. Number two would be to maybe with regards to you are leasing property from a certain person. Now, you need to be very careful as a farmer when you're leasing property from another person because there are regulations to it. Like, for an example, Section 3 of the subdivision of agricultural land. You need to know when would you need the minister's consent, when would you not need it. And you should also, as a farmer, not try to bypass regulations. I'll give you a typical example. Farmers do not necessarily pay the going rate to their employees, and that creates a problem. Farmers do not enter into valid employment agreements with their farm workers. So they'll give you what they want to give you, and you can stay there for as long as you can. Now you would be infringing burial rights. Now you're also infringing labor law rights because you're not sticking to the basic conditions. Yeah. Hence, you need to look at things like the sectoral determination for farmers, and you need to look at the basic conditions of employment for farm workers so that you can know what you may and may not impose, right? And with negotiation, like I said to you, if it's within the ambit of the law, you would know what you want out of it, but you need to align it with the regulation that fits it.
That's very important. Unfortunately, as much as there are many stories where workers, in fact, are paid fairly and sometimes even more than the minimum wage, it's a reality that some workers still work for below the minimum wage in South Africa. So it's a reality. I suppose that then impacts other parts of your business as a farmer if you don't comply with these things. If I am a farmer and I'm entering into a contract and I've got a buyer that I have a contract with, sometimes non-payment is an issue. What recourse do I have, and how do I navigate situations where people don't meet contract obligations?
Obviously, in your agreement, you need to ensure that there are certain clauses that cover you. You can have a clause for breach of agreement. In this clause, you can specifically state what needs to happen without incurring further costs or like approaching a court. Let's say, for an example, if you breach, I need to give you notice within 7 days. And if you don't comply, then you need to return what I have given you. So when we go to court, we're not at the stage where we're disputing whether you need to return it or not. It's clear. You breached the contract, you need to return it. So you need to have clauses that protect you in the agreement. You need to have a clause that caters for non-performance, to say what happens in an instance that the other party does not perform. Basically, that's it.
Well, what would you say, what are the foundational steps that I, as a farmer or agribusiness owner, need to take to ensure that I have a solid legal foundation?
Your first point of entry would be the land that you're going to work on. You need to decide whether you're going to own this land, meaning that you have to buy it and then register it at the deeds office and go through all the processes. If you're leasing it, the type of lease agreement that you're entering into, you need to ensure that it complies with Section 3 of the Subdivision of Agricultural Land Act. And if it is an arrangement that you guys have, maybe a partnership, you also need to enter into an agreement where you specify that maybe this person is bringing the land, I'm bringing the money, and you have a joint venture, enter into an MOU. So that's your starting point, your basis. Now you're moving on to, let's say, for an example, there is a neighboring farmer where you can actually take your cattle to gaze on his land. You can take your cattle there to drink water from his land. Now, you would not have an informal agreement with this person. You would rather register a servitude over his property to ensure that he cannot maybe deny your cattle access. But you also need to look at other things. You need to study farming and know how to deal with unforeseen circumstances, because it has happened to someone before. You're not the first farmer. Let's say, for an example, what happens if my cattle are gazing on your grass and they get food poisoning or whatever the case is? How are we going to deal with that? Which happens a lot. So you need to take out insurance for such. For an example, if you are supplying meat to an abattoir that's really, really far, you would need now to take out insurance for the transition that is happening. Let's say there's an accident on the road. How are you going to deal with that? You don't want to incur that loss. So there are minor details that you need to take care of, but you need to build from a point of knowledge. You need to know what you want, and you need to incorporate your plan into legislation.
Well, I have to say that normally we would have this conversation in a much more formal office setup, but it's been lovely being able to take you from your office space into Mother Nature. Thank you so much for joining us for this conversation.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah. That's Pearl Gibbs, our legal expert, of course, giving us the lowdown on all legal matters, what it is that you need to know to make sure that you have a good and solid legal foundation when building your agricultural enterprise. And that's a wrap for this episode. Remember to subscribe to our podcast on your favorite platform so you never miss any of the episodes. From me, Duncan Masiwa, our technical producer, Megan van der Vent, and the rest of #Team Food from Zanzi, thanks for listening.